Hola, mi amigos. Recently, my partner and I had the pleasure of taking a 2 week vacation to Costa Rica and Peru. We designated the first 10 days for a organized tour in Costa Rica, and our remaining 4 days were designated just for Peru. And those 4 days, we toured Cusco, went to Machu Picchu, and our last part of the trip was to climb Wayna Picchu, and the entire trip was absolutely amazing. Now, on our first 2 days is when we arrived into Cusco and then actually got a chance to do a day tour of Cusco itself. Now, first we had to actually take a flight to Lima, which is where the layovers are to get to Cusco, and that was the only bad part of the entire trip. We had an 8 hour layover in Lima, so we just stayed in the airport. And yeah, anybody who's taken layovers and stays in airports knows just how nasty it is and uncomfortable. And I didn't get any sleep. I don't think my partner did either. And by the time we actually it was only an hour and a half flight, an hour and a half, 2 hours from Lima to Cusco. For those of you who enjoy flying, that's pretty fun flight. Lima's at about sea level, up to about 1,000 feet above sea level, and Cusco is just slightly above 11,000 feet above sea level. So you have quite a big difference. I mean, it's nestled right in the Andes Mountains. So when you're approaching the landing strip, you're basically banking in between mountain slots, and you have to drop out of the sky really quick to get to the landing strip. So, you're doing a lot of practically sideways flying. So for me, who likes to fly, it was really fun. For those of you who are a little nervous flying, you might want to keep your eyes closed for that part. One of the things you have to watch out for is altitude sickness. Some people have it, some people don't. I'm one of those people that doesn't really get it. But our first day, we arrived early, and I hadn't had any sleep in over 24 hours, and I didn't want to push it. So I basically did nothing. My partner went and just explored around the area a little bit, stopping at shops and getting something to eat. I didn't even eat anything all day. That was pretty much the first day. The second day, we also spent in Cusco, but this was our day where we could actually really explore Cusco. And one of the first places we went to was the Plaza de Armas, and it was only about a block away from our hotel we were staying at, which was called the Tupac Yupanqui. And one of the amazing things about a lot of the buildings in downtown Cusco, which we didn't even realize until we were told by one of our guides, is that a lot of the buildings are built on old Incan foundations. And you'll start to notice as you look around you, sure enough, a lot of the buildings, including our own hotel, the whole lower half of the building are old Incan, I don't know if they're temples or buildings or what, but they are so solid in construction that they just utilize the old buildings to build on top of them because they're strong enough to survive earthquakes after all these years. And it was really cool to see that, especially I'm a person who really can appreciate engineering and architecture and just the precise fitment of things. As you'll see later in the video, just how precise the building was with these stones. It's unrealistic to me, just what they were able to accomplish. So our first real stop in Cusco was on our own. A tour wasn't until in the afternoon. So we just took a walk down around Cusco and stopped at the Plaza de Armas, which is actually a pretty important place. A lot of important things have happened throughout the history of Cusco, which is actually the center capital of the old Incan Empire. And Cusco, from what we were told, actually means the navel, or the actual center of everything. So we went to the Plaza de Armas and just explored, walked around, checked out the shops and the vendors, and just, that was our first way of taking in Peru. and it was such a great experience. The people are so friendly and so warm. It didn't matter who they were, what they did. You always felt welcome. It was very nice. And just the plaza itself, there are some Catholic cathedrals, and I believe the cathedral of the Jesuits was there, and just a lot of old architecture and a lot of Catholic influence from when the Spanish came eventually, and destroyed a lot of the Incan temples and buildings. Now, our official tour started in a place called Coricancha, which is actually inside of a Catholic cathedral, but it shares the ruins of these old ancient Incan structures. We started off meeting outside and got to take a look inside, and I could have spent an entire day just here alone, but we had a few other places to go, and we had to go to them before sunset, which is pretty early. It was only around 5:30, 6 o'clock here this time of the year. I don't know about the rest of the time of the year. And it is something to behold. You get a chance to actually touch and look up close and see this old stone architecture that used to be old Incan temples. I've seen a lot of different ancient architecture at different museums and various museums around the world, including Egyptian. And the similarities are mind-boggling on just how precise the fitment of these stones are. And it's not like what you would expect your typical brickwork where, you just have the same overlying pattern. You're talking asymmetrical, even up to 12-sided stones that are perfectly fit together with no mortar. I mean, you're perfect. And when I mean perfect, I mean there are no gaps. There's even a section where the edge of a wall is completely broken off, where you can see when the Catholics came, they destroyed these buildings so they can incorporate their own buildings into this area where there's a big courtyard inside, and you can see the inside of these walls, these huge stones where they mate together at the joints, and even where it's broken, you cannot tell where the joint is unless you inspect it very carefully. The only time I've ever seen that is with an EDM'd surface, which EDM is electro discharge machining, where you literally use electronic discharges or just plasma discharges from electricity to basically burn away at metal that leaves perfectly smooth surfaces. That's the only thing I can compare it to that I've ever seen. And I've been in manufacturing and machining and making precise things, the most precise things that exist in our world to this day. And that's the only thing I can even think of that comes close to what these look like. Now, I have no idea how they made them. All I can say is that the modern theories are the only way they could have made them is what they had available to them, which didn't include iron. To me, that's just absurd and almost insulting. But, that is just a whole nother subject on its own. So I digress. So we got to explore these small remains here, and it only gave us a taste of what we're going to see later. And after we visited Coricancha, then we took a trip to a place called Sacsayhuaman, and this just blew me away. Not Coricancha already, but this is we had to drive a little ways away from Cusco, up to where you could actually see a beautiful sight overlooking Cusco. And here you found It was kind of like in an open field. Just you're surrounded by these structures built into the sides of the mountain, and it's the same kind of architecture mixed with more not so neat architecture. You can tell that it was done in two different eras, and the same thing, just these gigantic stones made out of limestone with asymmetrical shapes, all just almost look melted together. So perfect and just amazing to look at. I could have spent days just looking at this and admiring the skill that went into this. So after going to Sacsayhuaman, there were two other places we went, and I can't quite remember the names of them, but they were also just old Incan ruins. And I'll put the names in the subtitles when I find the paperwork. One was it was very similar to Sacsayhuaman, and there was a nice beautiful overlook of Cusco, and there was an old tomb where they found remains, and there was a third place we went that was towards the breaking of the evening, and it's an old spring with more old ruins with the same kind of architecture, where it was basically an old aqueduct type system where they had the spring water coming out of spots in the structures that was a constant supply for them. And it's actually where the local beer company, where they get the water for making their beer, comes from there, which we tried, and it was excellent. For the life of me, I can't remember. I'll also put a caption or a subtitle what it was. And yeah, that was again another sight to behold. Third day was the day we were really looking forward to, and that was, of course, seeing Machu Picchu, which is now considered a wonder of the world. Now, the trip to Machu Picchu, for us originally it was going to be taking the Peru rail train straight from, I believe the city was, or not the city, but the stop was Pularoy, and it was supposed to be a 3 to 4 hour train ride all the way to Aguas Calientes, which is a small town that's the segue for getting to Machu Picchu. But a section of the railroad that goes through the well-known Sacred Valley was damaged due to previous rains, so instead of getting on the train there, we had to get on a bus and then take an hour and a half, 2 hour bus ride to another train station, which I can't remember the name of. And from there, we took a approximately 2 hour train ride to Aguas Calientes. Now, we took the Vista Dome train, which is literally a Vista train. It's all windows, and it was such a beautiful view. It would have been nice to have taken the entire route through the Sacred Valley, but it didn't matter. Just that section alone was incredible. The whole way you're going parallel along the flowing sacred river that goes all the way into Machu Picchu and right through the town of Aguas Calientes. It is one of the most magnificent rivers I've ever experienced in my life. It's just loud, roaring, clear water going through these huge boulders at the base of the mountains. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I would highly suggest you have to stay at least one night in Aguas Calientes so you can fully experience Machu Picchu. We met a lot of people that went to Machu Picchu and just they went there and did a quick tour or did whatever and had to catch the early afternoon train to head straight back to Cusco or wherever else they were coming from. You just can't do that. You really have to experience at least a full day to yourself at Machu Picchu, because it's such a big place and there's just so much to take in. It's just a few hours just isn't going to cut it. Let's put it that way. When we got to Aguas Calientes, we had to check into our hotel real quick, which we stayed at the Santuario Hotel, which was right towards the end of the town, right next to the river. And then we had to catch the our bus, the first bus to hit our tour in Machu Picchu. And that's the only way to get to Machu Picchu from Aguas Calientes. You have to take the buses, which there are a constant stream of buses that take you back and forth to Machu Picchu and back to Aguas Calientes. Or you can hike it, which a lot of people actually do. And actually, there is a trail called the Inca Trail that takes you all the way from Cusco to Machu Picchu. And from what I remember, it's a 4-day, 5-night hike. Again, a lot of people also do that, and it looks very appealing, but obviously you have to be in pretty good shape to do it. So we got on the bus and took the 20-minute ride, which it's a pretty hairy ride up a switchback road that goes all the way up to Machu Picchu. And Machu Picchu is actually only about 8,000 feet above sea level. It actually sits lower than Cusco, which I didn't know. I was under the impression that it was actually higher, but it's not. Then we were able to finally get into the park and start our tour. And of course, there we were, instantly greeted by this absolutely beautiful view of Machu Picchu. You just have to take a short hike up some steps and little rocky edges, and there you're greeted by your well-known view of the city of Machu Picchu. Quite a bit from our guide. A lot of things I didn't know. I was already aware of some of Incan culture and some of Peru, but there were a lot of things that I wasn't aware of that we learned from him. And there we got a short tour. It lasted about 2 hours long, where he took us through and just explained a little of the culture and the little known history of what's left of Machu Picchu, and got a really nice, engaging, and a good learning experience of where we were and just why exactly we were there.
The Incas, they were polytheists, so one of the most important gods for them were not the mountains, but these were the spirits that dwelling into the mountain, that were called the Apus. So normally in every August, so the people, they normally go up to the highest part of the mountains to perform some kind of payments, some kind of offerings dedicated to the mountains. But not exactly the mountains, the Apus, that these are the spirits, that they were like a kind of keepers of all the people that they live around these areas.
It's one thing to see a place like that in videos and in pictures, but it's just nothing can describe actually being there. And it's definitely ranks in the top 3 places I've ever been to in my life so far. It was such an amazing experience. There's just this amazing spirit there that just overwhelms you. It's impossible to describe without actually being there. it was nice to actually be staying in Aguas Calientes, because after the tour was over, we got to spend whatever time we wanted there and then take whichever bus back that we had to. And since we were staying there, we were able to take the last bus that left, which was basically at sunset, which is when the park closes. Hopefully some of the shots I took can at least give some sort of perspective of what it looks like and what it's like to be there. But, you know, as somebody who has seen shots and actually went there themselves, I know it won't, but it's beautiful nonetheless. I still haven't figured out the difference between alpacas and llamas. I've read about it. It's been explained to me, but I still don't remember. But either way, one of them or both of them they walk around in a few sections of the park. It's really cool. They're really nice and friendly. The atmosphere there is just, it's wonderful. So after we took our time and we took the last bus back, then we could actually relax and actually explore a little bit around Aguas Calientes and actually check out our hotel room, which was absolutely awesome. The funny thing is, a lot of the complaints of our hotel room was that the noise from the river is just too loud that it couldn't sleep. But for somebody like me, it put me right to sleep, and I could have spent hours just listening and staring to that alone. And it was one of the best rooms I've ever stayed in, actually, because of that.
Hola de Aguas Calientes, Peru. We are in the small town of Aguas Calientes. We got in here around 10 a.m. and straight to check into the hotel, and at 10:30 we got on the bus. It's a 25-minute bus ride to the entrance of Machu Picchu, wherein we met our guide, Alberto. He was a great guide. Well, actually, there's the bus right now that took us up to Machu Picchu. Anyhow, he was a great guide. He gave us a little bit of history of Machu Picchu, and then after he left, Michael and I just kind of wandered about the area. It was one of those pinch me moments, because it's one of kind of like something that you wait for all your life, and you know you're there, and it's like, am I really here?
So we got to explore around Aguas Calientes and prepare ourselves for the next day, our last day and fourth day, which was to climb Wayna Picchu. And Wayna Picchu is actually that high mountain peak you see in those typical picture of Machu Picchu you see in the background. It's about another 1,000 feet above Machu Picchu. We were to hike that the next day, and we needed a lot of rest for that because, yeah, we're not in the best shape, but we're not also in terrible shape. But we do hike a lot, as you see in a lot of my travel videos. We go to a lot of places and hike. So we had to prepare ourselves. So we ate at a really nice place that was recommended in some book we read, and it was really good. It was really good. I can't remember what it was called either. I know, I don't remember anything from the trip. And I didn't take any ayahuasca, for those of you who know what that is. So we got up early. We had we had tickets for the first group to go up. They only allow 400 people a day by permit to actually hike up to Wayna Picchu, and we were the first 200 and the first group. So we had to be there between 7 and 8 a.m. to get to the gate and sign in and do our hike. Now the cool thing was, once you went up, you could stay as long as you wanted. And we pretty much stayed as long as we could. We stayed See, we got there at about 7:15 to the sign-in gate, and we didn't sign out until noon, in which it had just started to rain on our hike back. The hike up was incredible. It's not that bad. Even those with a fear of heights, yeah, it shouldn't be too bad for you, but it's pretty hairy in some spots, pretty steep, but there are a lot of cable handrails to hold on to for some of those spots. I don't think it was that bad. It was a nice adventure. It was a good workout. You have to stop and take your breath a lot, and you also need a lot of water. Water, very important. You have to carry some water with you. As long as you keep it in a nice container, a non-disposable container, you'll be all right. The view up there was just absolutely breathtaking, as you would imagine. It's amazing. It was a whole different experience in its own from Machu Picchu. And if you go to Machu Picchu and you're going to stay a day, you have to climb Wayna Picchu. Just make sure you get all of your tickets for everything in advance, which we did through a travel company called Peru Gateway. And it was actually through like a smaller company of Peru Gateway called Cosmic Tours, I believe. Experience was something else. It was just something else. South America is a beautiful continent. I know we only went to Peru. It was one country out of the whole continent, but first impressions are everything. And Peru was such a beautiful place with such beautiful and friendly, warm people. It left a hell of an impression on me, and we definitely plan on going back and maybe exploring more of Peru, like Nazca or Lake Titicaca, Easter Island, or even Lima, which we just stopped at as a layover. But then, you have so many other beautiful countries there that it's just, I can't recommend enough for people to put Peru or South America on their list of places to see for traveling, because it's incredible. I can't say enough about it. That was our trip to Peru, and I sure miss it. And like I said, I know these videos just can't say enough, and it can't show enough of just how beautiful and grand and different, and just how culture is there. It's just it can't do it justice, but it can do a little. That's one of the reasons I like doing these travel videos, is for people that either don't have the opportunity or might eventually have the opportunity to go somewhere, of just how many different places there are around the world to see, which drives me to want to, that's the whole reason I travel, is to see the differences and just the different cultures and different scenery, different geography. Just there's a big world out there to explore, and I just try to give a piece of that to everybody to see, and to try to share that beauty with everybody. So I hope everybody does enjoy this video, and I hope you look forward to seeing more, and that you can actually take the time and be able to take a trip to these places and enjoy them just as much as I do. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.